Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of the All About Marketing podcast. This is your go to destination for all things marketing, advertising, branding, and business. So far, we have met many personalities, successful entrepreneurs, and marketers who have given insights on the work that they do and the business that they run. Today, we have a guest who is unique in so many ways. Santosh Kumar has had a successful career in the corporate. He was in the US for more than a decade and then he returned back to India with Between Us. What is Between Us? What has his journey been like is what we would like to explore in today's episode. Welcome Santosh to the podcast.
Thank you, Amey. Thank you so much.
Yes, so let's start with what is Between Us.
All right. So I think I'll go down a little bit of memory lane. Growing up in a joint family, I grew up with all my cousins, and the favorite part of the day was actually it was the night when my grandmother would tell me stories. And as I grew up, I realized the power of storytelling, not just stories which are which we see or read, but in general, I realized that each one of us tells stories, right? And I think the most important story is the one we tell ourselves. I still remember sitting with a group of friends and we were debating about the title, and one of my friend just texted me, listen, this is BUS. And I said, what does that even mean? So she said, BUS means Between Us.
Okay.
And I said, that's the app title because this is about the first conversation we have with ourselves. I remember through my 16 to 17 years of working experience, I have worked in research, I've worked in operations, I've worked in sales and strategy. I've even coded. And I realized that every time I've taken up a new assignment, the first conversation I've always had is with myself. I remember my boss telling me, Santosh, we are a very small startup and I'd like you to travel a lot to the US and start getting business. And when I flew into the US for the first time, so I've been there for almost 15 odd years. I've never had to put on an accent. I just talk normal, clear. I've never had the pressure to, be who I'm not. I've always been who I am. My closest friends today are my clients. So what I realized is that when I look back at all of those experiences, why did that happen? That happened because I was authentic, true to myself. I never had to be who I'm not. I said, if I could take that concept and build a platform where everyone can come and tell their story, and if those stories have the right kind of merit, we could create a society which probably is truly inclusive, right? And that's how Between Us was born.
Super.
So I think that's what Between Us has been.
Sure. So for our audience, if you could tell us, where did the thought come in your mind that how did you decide that, okay, I have had enough of one career, I want to reset and start something which is to do with something which is as simple as conversations?
That's a very good question. And if I were to ask myself, when I remember dropping out of my business school and calling my dad and telling him that I am dropping out. And he said, okay, what is it that you want to do? I said, IIT Kharagpur is a research division and they're starting off a .com portal and I want to be a part of it. And the only question my dad asked was, when family asks me what you do, what should I say? I said, he's figuring out something on the web.
Okay.
That's all I told him. And from there to moving to e-business consulting, to training and development, I never planned for my career. Every path you choose, personal or professional, it's meant to be that way.
Right.
I mean, you follow that path.
Right.
And I felt that why don't I take all of those experiences And I think I probably felt that the timing was perfect because people changed a lot post COVID. All we had during that phase of COVID was just our family, right? So when it was at that phase, I realized that people were willing to listen to these stories. You know, Amey, mental health was always a problem. It was never on the forefront. People never wanted to talk about it. I remember 31st of March 2020, I think the lockdown had just started. My mom said something very interesting. She said, I don't think this lockdown is going to be for a month or two. It's going to be a long term.
Wow.
So she asked me a straightforward question. What do you think is going to be the toughest part of this? I said, family dynamics is going to be a big challenge. She said, exactly. But there is something much more behind that. And she said, you should talk about mental health because this is going to be one of the biggest issues each one of us will face.
Right.
Right? Our planet, sustainability, our climate. There might be buzzwords for some conferences, but people have started taking this.
These are real issues that are
Yes.
impacting people.
And I think I realized that the kind of things I wanted to talk about, I believed in. People are talking about it. But most importantly, I think I am extremely hopeful of the current breed or generation of folks. They are called Gen Z, and there's so many things. I think this is a group of people, despite all the talks that goes around them, they truly believe in causes. Right? I felt that I have a great audience who are going to listen to this. I don't know how much of them they would act on, but at least I have an audience who will listen to it. And if they, in some form or the other, can even influence a generation above them, their parents, their friends, their teachers, it'll be great. But the idea was never to do just a podcast or have guests. The idea was to build a platform where not just me, but other people would come and they start telling their stories. And we have the right kind of people who will listen to those stories and probably help them create that impact. And that's why between us, for me, it's not just a venture or not just a storytelling platform. I think the basic theme of between us is make every conversation count.
So when it comes to stories, Santosh, why podcasting? You could have done it in so many other ways. It could have been a book. It could have been a
Yes.
show.
Sure.
But what specific thing about podcasting were you attracted to?
Power of podcasting or lies in the fact that you and I are having a one-to-one conversation. I think that is so impactful. Correct? So and that is the in thing today. This is the most personalized way of having a conversation. Right? If you've gone through our episodes, you will realize that there are no question and answers. It's two people sitting out there and having a conversation. And I think if you look at where we stand today at the world, whether it's the wars which are going on, whether we are fighting for, anything and everything. There are naysayers on climate. There are debates on, wokeness, anti-wokeness. So many I think half of our problem, more than half of our problem can be solved if one of us can sit and listen. Right? I think podcasting as a medium can allow people to at least one person is talking, the other person is listening.
Yeah.
If we can all sit down and have basic conversations, half of our problems are solved, isn't it?
Sure.
I think to me, that's what podcasting does.
Great.
If done the right way.
So when it comes to between us, right? You have a vision as to the kind of topics that you want to cover. These are topics which are very personal for you.
Yeah.
But for someone who wants to start a podcast, right? If you could tell us what's the process like? How do you go about with selecting a topic or selecting a guest? So does the topic come to your mind first and then you search for a guest? Or is it that you meet a person and you are able to pull out the right kind of stories from them?
Okay. So, very interesting question. I always tell my guests, you are important. And for me, this podcast platform is important. But really, the protagonist is the story. So if you want to start a podcast, ask yourself, what is it that you believe in? Right? And for me, the heart of a story lies in its authenticity. As authentic you are, the more people you can reach, the more impact you can create. So, when we started, there were a host of topics I wanted to talk about. And I tell you, Amey, I did not have a single guest. I went to the studio who said, let's collaborate, let's start. The first episode was a solo podcast on, which I recorded was on manifestation, how I manifested things in my life. A friend of mine recommended a doctor who became a fashion designer.
I remember that.
Yes. That first guest recommended a couple of them. That couple of them recommended somebody else. They just said, aap inse baat kar lo. I had this great guest, Mr. Amey Asuti, who's a legend, who created the character Bahadur. He was at Kitab Khana. My producer was there. They connected and he called me and said, this is this guy, he's 90 years old. He's created this comic character. Have you heard of Bahadur? I said, if you're an Indian, you don't have not heard, then there's a big problem. Why don't you just talk to him? And I remember him asking me that question, Barkhurdar, मैं तो हर जगह आता हूँ, आप मुझसे क्या पूछोगे? And my response to him is, कहानी के पीछे वाली कहानी. Your journey which nobody has spoken about. Since you've asked, especially on metaverse. And he gave me another guess. And then I was on LinkedIn, I started writing to people. Not one single person I wrote to said no to me. Everybody came. That's all it happened. It all happened truly organically. And I think that's how, I think a good story grows organically as long as it has authenticity within it. And authentic stories create genuine impacts. And I think we were discussing this offline again. We are in an era where purpose-led entrepreneurship is the way to go. Right? Because we have to look at, we are no longer living in an isolated world, right? The world is a community in the true sense, right? So I think as long as we have a great story to tell and it can create an impact and you believe in yourself, you will be able to tell a story.
Sure. Santosh, both you and I run podcasts, so people see the episodes, people watch a video and they feel, what's the big deal? There are two people sitting across a table conversing, right? Telling a story. But there is a lot more, right? That happens. There is a madness behind the method that people see. So I want to understand what all goes behind the scenes, right? How do you, so you have a conversation, right? But how do you plan the whole distribution? What are how did you go about planning that where between us would be? What would be the frequency of the episodes? What are the kind of stories that you want to connect, build? What goes behind the scenes is what I want to know.
So I think two things are there. One is, of course, you need to have a thorough research. I treat every guest as a storyteller. For me, they are all storytellers, right? When they are here to tell a story, it's extremely important that we do enough research and we ask them questions which makes them think. I've had a guest, I think, who's appeared on some 25, 30 podcasts across.
Right.
And he focuses on AI. And I think ours was the 25th podcast he appeared on. When the podcast recording was over, he said, I never expected you to ask the kind of question. For me, that was very strange because I felt if I'm talking about, AI and the allied technology, metaverses, you would want to know about everything. For example, you are cooking and that's a passion for you and you have a chef on the show. You would want to understand when you are listening to the episode, to me, you should be able to feel the spice. Even if it's an audio podcast, the mix of spice, you should be able to taste the food while listening to the podcast.
Right.
And that can only happen when the person who's actually the host, he's able to drive the guest to share those details. Right? You can only motivate your storyteller to tell the right story when you are motivated enough to bring out the best.
Right.
So I think enough research and absolute belief in the content. And I think, I mean, I said this to answer your earlier question. If you do not believe in the story, please do not have a podcast on that, because it will come through. We are today, space where everybody is getting into podcasting. Brands are getting into podcasting, but they are using it as a marketing tool.
Right.
But the thing is that at the end of the day, marketing and sales have been there for ages.
Right.
And some of the most successful brands are those brands which have been able to connect with their audience. If that connection is not there, it's over, right?
Right.
So for me, lots of research goes into the story, the content, about the guest.
So do you have a team or do you do it yourself?
I have a team of interns who work with me. I have a full-time young, and I call him young, dynamic, and he calls himself an old soul at 23, because he likes all the old school music. So one of the things, when he sits down and asks me, what is it that you want from the guest? I always tell him the story behind the story. What, why, where, when led the person to be where they are. When we talk about mental health, we just don't talk about the person and the person's job. We talk about the effect of mental health. I had a school counseling psychologist. I had an express art therapist. I had a Vedic history. We've had different kinds of people. I think understanding the topic, understanding the story behind it is very important. So when you go into those detailing, I think everything else falls in place.
Right.
Some of the podcasts I've done, we do micro podcasts. We don't go to a studio and do it. We do it at a coffee shop or wherever they want. And we use my iPhone 15 and shoot it. And it just, it works brilliantly. The edits are done in-house. We don't even go out to do it. And we've had some of the best views with a photojournalist in Bombay. Shot out of third wave coffee and just a phone. What worked? Because we looked at this, and he does still photos. And there is a story behind every photo. We went into those stories.
Sure.
So I think people love to talk. If you're able to shake them up, if you're able to make them feel comfortable, if you're able to empathize with your guest, they'll come out.
Sure.
And all of that comes only if you truly believe in that.
Right.
Enough research is important to have a real conversation.
Right.
And the rest of the things are, I think it's just that detailing is very important, and please do not conduct it as a question answer.
Absolutely.
It just should be like two people are sitting in their living room or in a coffee shop and having a genuine, honest, authentic conversation. When you sit with your friend, your close friend, there is no exhibition, right? There are no inhibitions. You sit out there and you talk.
You talk naturally. Yeah.
Yes. And I think that's what will make it an authentic conversation.
Sure.
To get eyeballs, it'll only go to a certain extent. If you look at some of the most successful storytellers we have, who have been in this business for 5 to 10 years, internationally, I look up to, and she's the reason why I'm podcasting, is Mel Robbins, and I think I shared this with you.
Right.
An interesting person, because I think she had a debt of almost $980 million, $80,000, $980,000 of debt, and her story was, and that's around that time she started the podcasting,
Right.
and where she is today. The reason why she connects and took time and where she is today is every story of hers is authentic, and it connects with each and every one of them.
Right.
And I think that is the only secret to a successful podcast episode.
Sure. And I also I agree with you there that you do what you believe in.
Yeah.
These days, a lot of times people want formulas, right? How should I? Because we get a lot of calls as a production agency, and people ask, how should we create a podcast, right? And not all times these are brands. There are
Yes.
individuals, and they want a formula. They want a template. To which I also feel that what is it that you want to do?
Hmm.
You know, Joe Rogan does a 3-hour episode. People watch it.
Yes.
Somebody does a 20-minute episode. People watch it. People may not like a 20-minute episode. They might fall in love with a 3-hour
Yeah.
episode. So have a conversation which you enjoy having till the point that you want to have it.
Yes.
And that becomes your episode, right? You don't need to
I'll tell you, when we started off, a lot of people came and said, "यार संतोष 2 घंटा तो impossible है बैठना." Like एक सवा एक घंटा 40 मिनट में खत्म करना. And today I look back, what started off at 40, 45, 50 minutes, we are now 2 hour, 15 minute, 2 hour, 20
Right.
minute. I think this whole perception that this is what the market wants. If you look at some of the most successful brands, I think the simpler the message, the more effective it is.
Right.
Just look at Facebook. At the end of the day, you can simply say, we are connecting with people. How often do you connect with a school friend? It's because of that you started connecting with people.
Right.
The idea was simple. If the conversation is simple, it does not matter, you know, how long I'm not saying it is gone. There are podcasts which are 4.5 hours and they do very well.
Right.
It all depends on, that's why I again say this. I think genuine, authentic conversation will always come through.
Sure.
Honest conversation. I think some of you are into branding and you will know the most successful brands are the most simple, has the most simple messaging.
Right.
It has to be, I think it's a buzzword amongst the word relatable. You know, I wish people understand the real meaning of that. Relatability is when you're able to connect to something. You just hear that story and say, wow, I have been through this. I go through this on a day-to-day basis. I think that's what truly matters.
And when you do podcasting, you meet people whom you otherwise wouldn't have got a chance to meet, and you hear stories which are very personal, very unique. I'm sure each guest has been a special guest, but if you have to pick up, say, the top 2-3 who left an impact on you and your audience, who would those be?
You know, and I will not sound, I don't want to sound diplomatic here, but I would say there is, at the end of every episode recorded, honestly, a part of me goes away with that, because I think every story has stood out for me in their own way. If I have to pick, I would pick 3 episodes. One is the episode with Mr. Amey Asuti, 90 years old today, I think 91. 2023, I went to meet him. He was 89. My studio here in Mumbai, the average age is 27, 26.
Right.
I went to Mira Road, picked him up, came down, chatted with him. We started the episode at 1:15, 1:20, finished recording at 4:30. And I was looking at the faces of all my team members. They were exhausted for whatever reasons. This man has lunch and I told him, I'm booking a cab for you. नहीं संतोष, मुझे यहाँ से metro जाना है. I will take a metro, go to Andheri, meet my son. I have not met him for 3 weeks. और उसके बाद मुझे चाय पे किसी और से मिलने जाना है.
Okay.
He's 89 years old. It was raining. It was pouring that day. That energy which he had. And I asked him, what is the thing? I did another micro podcast with him just in 2024. I asked him, what keeps you going? He says, all of us humans, जैसे turtle live for 400 years. Humans का age designate हुआ 120 साल.
Okay.
120 years is technically how much a human can live. We don't live that for multiple reasons, the way we conduct. His childlike enthusiasm, his energy, and as he says, you must learn to flirt. Yes, too बहुत serious. So he stands out. Another guest of mine is Mr. Vinod Rawat, an extraordinary guest. He lost his leg because at the age of 8.
Oh.
Because a truck came over it. His family didn't have 30,000 to pay, so it was basically taken off. He got into bad gangs. There was a shoot aside order for him, and something happened in his life, and everything turned. He participates in bike rallies, right? with bikers who have legs, and he wins. He treks, and I remember the title of that episode because he told me, Santosh, जब मैं impossible word लिखता हूँ तो मैं उसे breakup करता हूँ, and I write I am possible. I remember every single person who has come, and we never show that in the episode. They kind of choke up, and the guests, when they leave, they say, "Rulane ka aadat hai tumhara." I said, "No, that is not the idea also." But I realized at that point in time that he has given multiple TED talks, Vinod, right? But it's amazing how he has not shared those aspects of his life the way he has shared it. Story wahi hai, but the way he shares it. So Vinod Raut's story has stood out for me at the core of my heart. Another story which truly, I think this is the third guest, I think, which has impacted me is an episode I had in 2023 December for the holiday. I had two guests for the first time. One is a school counseling psychologist, and the other was an express art therapist. We spoke about mental health. We spoke about why mental health matters. I think that episode shook me up a lot, and I think we got nominated for that conversation we had, because we asked ourselves, what is the true meaning of holiday? It's about the holiday spirit, because the idea is that you might have had a great 2023. I may not have had that. That does not mean that I will not have a great 2024. But how do you motivate yourself when you've really had a bad year in your definition? So these three episodes have really stood out. That, I mean, in ways that has shaped me. To be honest with you, the schools I have attended, the countries I have traveled, the work I have done, have not shaped me as much as this podcast journey has shaped me.
Right.
The higher the position people have been, the most humble they have been, the most grounded they have been.
So from conversations to, I want to come to the impact, right? You've spoken about the impact that it has had on you as a person. What is the societal impact? ये podcast मतलब you do a podcast and then it's everybody goes back home, or is there a ground impact that you have also seen?
I have seen people write to me, and I have redirected all of those feedbacks from Instagram, from YouTube directly to the guests who have come on the show. That I think a bunch of people have gone to her, my guest, based on the conversation they have seen on the podcast.
Right.
We are not, I don't take any credit for improving their mental health, but because we've had those conversations, people have got to know that there are people you can talk to. Now, I think through the platform, when people's story come out, and that's why I always believe that everybody talks about mental health, but the journey of the person who's discussing mental health, if that can come out, the impact can be created. We are, in fact, started a startup series called the Bharat Startup Series, as I told you, where we are trying to have every player of the ecosystem, entrepreneurs, investors, accelerators. We're trying to have conversations with all of them, and we want to wrap up that series by having a round table with everyone sitting out there.
Sure.
Policymakers, investors, entrepreneurs. Talk.
Sure. So between us today is you and the conversations that you are having with these.
Between us today is the conversations and the story.
The conversations.
I'm just an enabler who's probably, I genuinely feel I've been fortunate enough to be able to do that. I think between us should always be known for the stories.
Great. But what's your plan for between us? We won't go very far. I don't want you to lay out a 10-year-old vision. But I want to know, like in 2025, for example, you mentioned startups.
Yeah.
Right? What are the things that you wish to do with the podcast?
So we've got some very exciting plans. We are tapping into schools because I think we today, as I said, the younger generation, I see them that they have so much they have a vision than probably you and me never had when we were 15-year-olds. So I think children, younger group of people, I really want, between us, we'll be working very closely with them. as I said, we have started working on series.
Right.
So it's not just the guests. So we're focusing on sustainability and climate. We're focusing on startups. We're definitely focusing on healthcare, and we want to bring out real solid stories on healthcare, not just the technology and the service provider, but the healthcare challenges which exists. The idea between us is to tell the stories of Bharat, not just to the people of Bharat, but also to the outside world. So we want to really take our stories globally.
Right.
That's the first step.
That you're taking. Great. And while you're doing this, have there been any moments, Santosh, where you have felt that I have tried enough? Maybe I'm not getting the kind of views that I should be getting, right? Is that number, the number of subscribers, the number of views, does that deter you, or have you seen episodes which have gone viral and some episodes which you thought would do well but they didn't do as well?
A lot of times.
How do you deal with that?
I think the only way I deal with that is so far have always been that there is a new story to tell tomorrow, and I just get into that. As we speak today, we've already got about 12 episodes under edits.
Wow.
And there are many more stories I'm about to tell.
So you wear many hats, right? Not just
Yes.
one cap.
Yes.
So it's as an investor, as a person who is a storyteller who is executing this, as
Yes.
producing it,
Yes.
thinking about where to take it next.
Correct. So I think I not once in all of the work I have done in 17 to 18 years, this is the first time where I have not felt even once whether I'm doing it right or not. There are so many people at every point in time who come and says, क्या कर रहा है संतोष, views ही नहीं है, engagement नहीं आ रहा है, इतने अच्छे कहानी कर रहा है, तो करते ही रहेगा, कुछ होगा नहीं. As I told you, the audio podcast, the streaming is really doing very well. The downloads are happening. It's growing. It may not be growing the way it should be, but it's growing. We are now finally focusing on how do we build the engagement, how do we focus on branding.
Right.
We've started looking at the marketing and distribution side of it. But not once have I woken up and asked myself, is this going to work or not? Because I think that's where we put pressure on ourselves. I'm not saying don't put pressure on you, but I think it's very important for you to know, if you believe in what you're doing, you will always succeed, and there is nothing new about it. You look around, you will find enough inspirations to show you that they have achieved what they have achieved.
Sure.
So I think we are there. We've already started talking to brands who genuinely want to work with us, who obviously want to see more views, more engagement, but who are willing to work with us. And I think before we started this podcast, I told you, it's important for me because this is not just a venture. My values, our values align with whoever we collaborate and partner.
Sure.
Because I think if we don't do that, and we are not true to who we are, I think the stories we tell will fall flat.
Right. And looking at the kind of work that you do, have there been any instances, any brands which have come forward? Because many a times brand managers, marketers, they look at a podcast or any media property for that matter as a vehicle for their own PR,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And try to force fit it. Has that happened with you as well?
It has happened twice in the last, I think, between November, December, it's happened 2 times.
Good money temptation that...
Not just good money. As a matter of fact, I could simply sit in the studio and keep hosting and keep telling my stories also. But I think there is always a catch, isn't it? And as I told you earlier, I'm telling you again, is that I think for me personally, it has always been like that. I've been raised with 2 amazing parents, me and my brother, where we've always been, some of the things which we hear nowadays about gender, about pronouns, about inclusiveness. Our parents both, they have shown us as I told you, I grew up with my cousins. There were never two rules for
Hmm.
my sister or me. We were all the value system we've had, the self belief. My late father, he used to work in an organization, and he could have had a very different life like his peers. And it's not an indictment on them. I mean, for him, his principles always mattered. And I think those value systems are clearly instilled in me and my brother. And I think somehow, whatever, I don't want to label it as anything, but I think somehow those value systems have carried forward within me. And I think we are very close to collaborating with a very exciting brand. And the best part about that is it, kind of tick marks on all the value systems we both believe in. And for me, that's the kind of partner I would like to work and grow with. Because both of us believe in the power of stories. And if everything goes well and if that collaboration comes through, I think it's going to be great.
Great. Is there any dream guests that you want to get on your podcast? Somebody who have always wanted to converse with, know their story?
I think I'll first say fictional guest.
Okay.
I would love. I love a lot of series. I watch a lot of series. So I am a big fan of Law and Order SVU.
Okay.
And there is a character that series started in 1999. It continues in its 25th or 26th season. The central character she started off as a rookie detective, and today she's Captain Olivia Benson. If I could get that character on my show, SVU stands for Special Victims Unit, which means victims of rape, sexual harassment, kids, senior citizens. The way her character has evolved, and she herself is born out of rape. Her story is very powerful. I resonate with that character.
So it's the character, not the actor who plays it.
The character. So that's why I said fictional character. And the other is my all-time favorite, Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory.
Okay.
I would love to have him. I'm pretty certain I would not be allowed to talk.
Okay.
But yes, real life guest. I think, and I just hope it happens. Is over the number of years I've seen it nationally, internationally, there's one leader I've always admired, and that's President Obama.
Okay.
I would love to have him as a guest. Now that he's no longer the president, and I see him coming on different podcasts, I always manifested to hope to have him and his wife, the First Lady. I found them to be extremely inspiring. Even after leaving office, I think the dignity, the class, the empathy he has shown in those 8 years of his leadership is very, very close to my heart. So I am of the opinion, and my team tells to keep any and every kind of politician away.
Okay.
But if I were, that is one dream guest I would love to have.
Okay. So before we break, we have a rapid fire round, right?
Yes.
Which makes things a little interesting. Maybe a little difficult for you.
Okay.
But we'll see how this goes.
Okay.
Okay. So, yeah. So, is there anything, a book or a movie that has inspired you? Or I would say even a story that has stood out?
A story that has stood out, I think, I would say the autobiography of a yogi is a book which has been translated in, I think, many languages. It's anybody who does yoga, meditation. It goes beyond that.
Right.
That's a book which has inspired me. That's a book I keep with me all the time.
Okay.
Yes, that's
when it comes to podcasts, audio or video?
always audio.
Always audio.
I do video, but personally, if I am given a choice, I would love to do audio podcasts.
Great. And your favorite podcast, other than Between Us, of course?
The Mel Robbins podcast is my favorite.
Is there any unusual habit or a ritual that you have before you record an episode?
Yes. Before I record an episode, it is mandatory for me to get worked up.
Okay.
My producer Samyak, he's not here. He was supposed to come. When I tell him I'm very nervous, he says the podcast will go very well.
Great.
When I look very calm and confident, he's very worried.
Right.
I think the only ritual I follow is my father. He always wanted me to get into media and broadcasting very early. I never got into it. I used to just tell him, Papa, this is just not for me. There is a silent prayer. I just talk to him for a few minutes and I say a little prayer to Lord Ganesha and I start my recording.
Is there a podcasting myth that you would want to bust?
I think I wouldn't say myth, but I just want to say this, that as I have shared this with you earlier, that just be true to yourself, as honest as you are, and as much as you believe in the story. I think it should be fine.
Right. Is there a thing that you learned about yourself through this journey?
Oh, absolutely. Lots of things. I think I've become more self-aware. I think I've learned the most important thing is the higher you go in the definition, success in itself is just transient. I think I've become more grounded, more rooted. I've learned to appreciate the efforts of people around me a lot more than I have before.
And what's your go-to during a recording session? Coffee? Water?
Coffee is my go-to for everything.
Everything?
Yeah, everything, yes.
Okay. And your personal mantra, if you can share it with our audience.
Personal mantra: there are no coincidences in life, and what is meant to be is meant to be.
I think this was a very different episode from the kinds that we usually do, right? And for many reasons. One being that you are a fellow podcaster, so sharing your story kind of also gives me something to reflect upon, right? In how you have gone about and you are going about building an intellectual property and also growing with that, right? And that's the most important thing. Keeping aside the commercial considerations, right? While you have it at the back of your mind, it's not something that is leading when it comes to taking decisions or being authentic to what are the issues that you believe in and that you want the conversations to be around. Another thing was that this step that you have taken, right? And I know this because we spoke much before you started the podcast. You recorded the first episode, right, between us, and over the last so many months you have stayed true to that vision that you have, and that vision has only grown, right? And there are now so many interesting things that you have told me about. So, and making those conversations, those stories, and the kind of impact that you are creating, I think it's so inspiring. Santosh,
Thank you.
We have had a very candid conversation where you have shared some of the things which to me were revelations, right? And you're very honest about them. And it has been a pleasure to have this conversation with you.
It's all mine. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you.
I'm sure that with your experience, this is going to be one of the go-to podcasts for marketing and branding.
Thank you so much.
I can say it with a lot of pride that I was one of the guests. So looking
That's
forward.
a humble attempt that I have, and I would tell the audience, please do follow our channel. We are also present on Instagram, so you could catch some of the reels, shorter videos there. The idea is to bring forth stories for us also at All About Marketing.
And please do follow Between Us podcast.
Absolutely. So a shout out to Between Us. Between Us has just completed 50 episodes now.
Our 50th episode comes out tomorrow. And as I said, it's just the stories that has taken us forward. So the more number of people support us, the more stories we can tell.
Yes. And there are many interesting guests that he has on his guest list. He has revealed a few names, but I wouldn't want to reveal it here. I think you should go and check out the channel yourself. Thank you.